Welcome to the final installment of our workflow application. Here we're going to be doing our clock in, clock out module where we can track hours. So as you can see here, we select a ticket and then the hours are going to be down here. As you can see, the message board is always going to be at the bottom of every module. I'm going to go ahead and show you little samples of how this works. So let's pick another ticket and let's go ahead and, as you can see, the dials already clock in to where the local time is. So it currently working is all you have to do is click it, and here it represents a blank one. It says you're currently working, and then we'll clock this individual out of the ticket at another time, and you will see how in real time we've added 7.77 hours. Okay, so let's go ahead and put them down for some more time. Let's say hypothetically they worked the day before, and we can also set that. And so they came in at 6:44 in the morning. All right, let's just say 6, and let's see what it does here. And they clocked out. There we go. And it also works here in mobile. It works just as easy. So their hours are applied per ticket. That's the beauty of this. So you can be very precise on who's worked on what. Here's your mobile. There we go. The graph does real well with mobile as well. So, and let's go ahead and also show you the filter option. So if you're looking for a specific day to see if somebody worked, you could just look no further than the filter. So I'll just start typing in something. And so the 25th of this month is represented here at 10.07 hours. I can do all of the 6 in the 20s basically, anything that month. So there you go. That's how you use the filter. An update invoice function was created for the most part because if someone is able to update their ticket's ID by updating the due date or changing its name or something, what have you, if you all remember, that's one of those things in the server side where I had to do quite a bit of work. I have to basically go through, and everything that has that ticket ID, as you can see here, needs to be updated. This is a big deal. And we're talking about messages, priorities, like all this stuff, new bug feature. This all update ticket needs to be kind of like worked with, and as you can see, it's a pain. Let me get to the point. Within the ticket builder, when I did a success for updating everything like we wanted, I needed to update the invoices again because there's a bunch of invoices that have the ticket assigned, like multiple. So I made a little function that just fires off upon success. And as you can see, gets the new ticket ID and the original ticket ID so we can be specific about what we're doing and what we're replacing. And I send this off to invoices, which is our new table, obviously. And the invoices is going to update based on the ticket ID. So let's go over there to our new invoices. And as you can see here, I can add our invoices as we already talked about. I can get our invoices. But I also need to do the update. And what it asks for is we're going to set the ticket ID. Which ticket ID? The one that was originally this now is going to be this. And we're going to do it for all of them that match this original ticket ID. So I wanted to add that in as to if you change something, like changing your title of something that's identifiable throughout the app, it's a pain. And when you do that, you got to remember that, okay, how many messages are referred to by that? I mean, whatever, how many invoices in this case, like how many things did I just screw up? And then you got to go find a way to go to the database and find where that needs to be updated. Now, keep in mind, if something gets deleted, you might very well want to do it for that as well. Go find out all this stuff. I didn't, because I don't really believe that someone would build out a ticket, make all these invoices, build all these messages, and then delete it. It sounds haphazard to say the least, a little dubious too. So in our delete, you can only delete like the tickets, front-facing stuff. The messages and the invoices are all still alive. Okay, so let's go through the clock in, clock out functionality. And basically, we can start off saying that we're going to need our timestamp. Obviously, we have the ticket list module here. Axios will be using our start time and date selector are basically something that will help us with our clock in, clock out. It'll determine, obviously our hours. So these modules will be brought in as well. Hourly bar chart is an apex chart. It's just the bars that you see. And that's a pretty easy one that we're somewhat familiar with. And number to time is kind of a converter. Well, it's not kind of, it's a converter where you turn a string of a time and date into an actual number. So we're going to have to utilize that. Okay, so let's start off with some of the important points here. Total hours is what gets fed to the bar chart. It just knows a title and then a number of how many hours that title received. And so this is kind of an array here that will be fed out. And employee hours is kind of similar. It's an object. It's just kind of the object of who exactly we're dealing with. It's going to be when they clocked in and when they clocked out. And so that'll help us determine, which employee worked on which ticket. Get total is a function that determines how many hours went past between the employee clocking in and clocking out. And the time variable that says no time yet, that just means that they're still currently working, and we wouldn't perform this function because it'll break. It's not a number, it's a string. So at that point when this is done, we set the total hours module, or we just set the total hours with our hook. Okay, so let's go on to filter hours. Now filter hours, just like a lot of these other functionalities, is going to have to clear out the time clock and fires off get total with an empty array so that we can clear the old data and it doesn't mess with our new request. And our new request is basically whatever the user typed into the filter text field. That's going to determine what we'd like to show. And so it's going to run through all of the employee hours and look to see if the time in has any of these dates. And if it does, it's going to basically push it through and set it up to be our time clock. And then also we need to find out how many hours that was. So these two, get total and set time clock, are going to be at the end. Populate fields, once again, needs to clear out our current data. And then we got to determine what ticket we're using. And obviously, if it's no ticket, then we got to set active ticket to null so we can clear. That clears out a lot of things, including our messages at the bottom. And then we would remove the ticket from the session storage because we're on no ticket. They selected the very top default. So if the opposite is true, obviously we're going to have to set these things back. So session storage and set active ticket are once again there being set. And we will be going to grab that specific ticket using the API call to grab ticket from the tickets folder. And if there is no info, we'll let them know, saying the hours was it wasn't a thing. There were no hours, and it'll tell us exactly what it says here with a response. Now, if there was something, we'll go ahead and we don't need these. There's just console.logs. But we will find out the hours here. If they were successful, we're going to have a temporary array set and ready because we're going to parse this JSON into JSON if it doesn't already, because I've been saving it as strings, so just in case. Not just in case, I have to do it. And then from there, I'm going to do a for loop through my hours. No reason for a console log anymore. But I will need to determine, is this the employee that we're looking for? Okay, let's push it to the temp hours, and we'll set the clock, and we'll call get total, get the hours total. And of course, we'll do the hours for the employee, and then from there we need to get messages again for determining which ticket we're on. Okay, so in out, we'll initially set up our time clock with a null while the function goes through its process. Next, which ticket is determined so that we can create a current time based on which button the user clicked, whether it's in or out. So when they click in, we need to know what's going on with are they coming in or are they coming or going? And this is, are we going to be basically giving them the time currently or not? And if it is the current time, we just use current time. If not, then we're going to go ahead and fill out the variables that current time would have given us and get them filled in here. And either way, this is going to be how we determine the user current time. And that will be determined if it's an in. If they clicked in, the in button, then current time will be reported as an in time for this key. And then obviously we'll be setting our values for clocked in and clocked out. And then else, we're going to go ahead and do the get total, because that means they are actually finished their day. And we're going to run and go ahead and get the totals of hours for everything they've worked. Once again, we don't need a console log, but we do need to set time clock to temporary, because we're going to run through and determine if they are, since they're clocking out, and if clock out means that with last time we were here, that they were setting the string here, we need to reevaluate that. Now they're clocking in, so let's go ahead and add this new time. I'm sorry, clocked in equals true. Okay. Basically, we have if they're clocked in or clocked out, there's a lot of that determines whatever button should be shown. So it's kind of it knows if they're in or out, and that's how we roll. That's how we know which button's going to be pushed. Anyway, so the set clocked is false here at the end. They're clocked in. See, if it's in here, clocked in is true. Else, it looks like this is going to be kind of useless. So we got to put if the last one is still says this, that means even when we made a mistake, hey, it's like, hey, the last one still says this, so we're all screwed up here. There's a mistake. This is kind of not necessary, but it's no big deal. It's just double checking, and it says, okay, we made a mistake. Then there we go. Let's go ahead with our user time. And otherwise, let's clock out as false. Anyway, we will be making the a put, because our hours are going to be changed. So we build the object here. No matter if we're coming or going, this is going to be updated. And this is our turning to a string for the database and determining which ticket ID. And once we have a success, we will do a populate fields, which we're all familiar with, and we will also be setting our time clock and employee hours. So use effect, just like all the other pages, it's going to come around and ask about if we have our ticket info. If it's null, we're going to call for it, get the username and call for it. We also want to see if we have an active ticket, so we can set populate fields if it was saved in the session storage. And then we need to get the current time. Let's get this console log out of here. And then with that current time, I'm going to be starting to auto populate some of these, the year, month, day, hour, minute, and AM, PM, so that if they're going to clock in or out, it's already pre-filled with the time, so just save some time for them. Here's our JSX. We always know that this is our list of tickets, same exact kind of setup for all the other pages. These are our date selectors and our time selectors. They're modules that utilize throughout the app, so we are all familiar with them from writing them. Start time, actually, it might be a new one. As you can see, my start date menu is new. It's just asking about the start date menu. So it's just asking about the day, the month, and the year. And that's our date selector. Date selector, sorry. Yeah, it's going month, day, and year as well. So hold on a second. Let me double check something. Start time. Start time menu. So we don't even use this at all. We're using start time menu. And start time menu obviously is going through the date title. Similar to our date selector, but it's just using for time. And it's passing something that can be identified here by the date title. So once you're familiar with one, you're kind of familiar with the other. Just making a module that I can go through and utilize this many times over if I have to. So based on if we are clocked in or out, I will show you a different button. They both fire off the same function, but I will pass you things such as in or out, whether I'm coming or going. These will be false because I used to have a button that just says current time, and since it's not current time, we're going by what the selectors, the time and date selectors say. I just wrote false because we're not using that other one anymore. Here's our filter hours we discussed earlier, and it goes through similar to our list. And while this thing's going through and showing all of our hours listed, it actually calculates how many hours it worked. Just the same formula we used up there earlier. It's actually pretty easy. And here we would say a total. If they're currently working, then we'd just say, hey, they're currently working, and then here's when they checked in. That basically means like if there's no time yet, if there's not any time, that means they're done with this. So we will print here. But if it does mean they're working, we'll go here. Anyway, the total hours, this gets tallied up, and we kind of try to fix it so that it only has 3 numbers after the decimal. And our hourly bar chart is going to pass on who we're talking about, and obviously the employee hours is what they call it over here on this module, but it is known as TimeClock here. If the active ticket, if we have an active ticket, it will say select ticket above, and if there's no active ticket, then this ticket has no note. So it just says there's no ticket. Yeah, okay, so it says if there's no ticket, here's the, I'm sorry, I missed that. Here's the explanation. So if there's no ticket, then select a ticket. And if there is one, then it says this thing has no information, and that's temporarily because it has a null. And if it doesn't have a null, then it has, what we're about to see is the hourly bar chart. Anyway, hourly bar chart, we're familiar with, because it's an Apex chart, they're all the same. What makes it different is the type here. So as you can see, I'm bringing in my number to time function, which I don't think I actually used on the other one. But regardless, I also am using React Apex, just like the other charts. This is my options. I just saved them in a hook, and we'll basically have to update this object, hook object, and then set it to make changes. So let's go the standard route of add up all day totals. So use effect is going to get the hours we were sent, and it's going to, first off, it's going to make sure that we have some, and if it's true, then we're going to call the add up days. We're going to walk through, determine, make sure that this is an object, like it's not null or anything, and let's go through our for loop, and we'll go ahead and switch those numbers to time so we can get those numbers into something legible. And so this is what we do here into date here. And if date here is a -1, then or it's not, or equals -1, then we push it to the days list, and the days total is pushed as well. We do another for loop through the days list, and it looks like we're just basically determining the timeout and making sure it doesn't say no timeout. And then from there we get the string, basically from the number. And then we can do our how many days was worked here. And then we can set our days total. So days total gets set into our temporary object along with our categories, our days list. So basically we took all those times in and times out and made a total of numbers of hours worked. And from there, we were able to feed over the options and the series. Now, what happened was I had a temp options object that we created when this thing started, and it held the place of options, our current state. And then I updated our temp, and once everything was updated in the temp, I set options here with our hook. Now options means whatever our temp was, and that new data basically resets our bar. And there you go with our hourly bar chart. Here is the server side that we were going to be doing for the adding the hours. Obviously, we're using an object when it's sent over, so we're going from rec.body, and it will kind of dismantle that body into the ticket ID and the hours, which we're going to be setting within the tickets table. So yeah, this is basically the server-side update that we'll be utilizing to update our tickets table. And at this point, when we get the call for our tickets, as you can see, we're doing all sorts of updating for tickets here. And when we change the name and whatnot, so there's a lot going on. Here's where we get the ticket info, and then this is where the hours would be coming in. So basically, we're asking for the email of the individual. These colons kind of on the start and end of it make sure that nobody else kind of has a similar email. And then from there, we get all the information that we would need regarding their hours per ticket. And this is the actual ticket here. For getting that information, then we'll get all the hours. And this would be for the actual, all of the tickets for the individual, and this is for the actual ticket specifically for the server side. And okay, so that's basically the server side that we were looking at for the hours. That's not too big because we've already put it on a table that we already had. Okay, there's another thing I want to show that I've done that I'm sure everybody can see, that I've added our priorities levels to each ticket. And this is kind of something you see throughout. However, another thing that I've done is, as you can see, that they're color coded on our timeline. So critical is going to be basically like a red, kind of purplish. A high priority gets more of an orangish and kind of brown, and medium is a yellow green, and the low priority ones are more like blue. So just a way to kind of set things aside and know what you're doing and what's most important to you. These will be demonstrated here as the filter. So if you want all ticket levels, as you can see, you get them all. If you just want to select mediums only, and then you only have your medium tickets available. So let's take a look as to what's going on here and how I did it. And just to the inspect element, you can see, obviously the value is always going to be the ticket identity. But I've added something to the option tags that says data-level. And that will help me in creating this look and feel. Coincidentally, I'm not recalling, hey, let's go get all the critical tickets. I'm only hiding them so they're not visible. I'm not making any calls to any database to request just these. We already downloaded all the tickets. I'm not busy going to go download any more again. No reason to. We're just going to filter the ones we currently have downloaded to our local. Anyway, so I'm going to dig into the code here. As you can see on date selector, I am, let me see, that's not going to be it. Ticket list, sorry. Ticket level. So we got the priority put in. And the priority is something that we can get from the database initially. And as you can see here, when I get that ticket ID, I'm also just going ahead and put the priority within the option value, or the option text, I'm sorry. So the value has the ticket ID, and then a string of kind of like what we kind of like commonly named it, and then it goes for the priority. So this will tell us, based on the data level, for populate fields, it will tell us which ones we can show. And it's like, what level are these? And then we can move on. So when I go populate fields within timeline, it'll be a good one, timeline. So populate fields, I'm asking it straight up, what's the priority level? And so I have to dig into my temporary object, go to the options and fill for the colors. And I say, if our priority level And that's going to be found out by the drop-down select menu of ticket list. I'm going to find out which ticket and what data level, and the determine priority level. And then from there, I go, is low, then use these colors. Medium, so on and so forth. High, use these colors. And you can expand on these as well. Let me see a good place. I can leave a good place to find something of the sort, to find some colors for you, like a color palette. I think Adobe has a free one, so I'll leave a link in the description for that. And obviously from there I can determine what I need to do. So that's how I get I'm passing it through the actual the drop-down menu. I'm just adding a new data level that it shows the priority, and then I determine what colors I want to show it. So I wanted to add that piece of information here to set the record straight as to how this is easily done without calling out to an API. Now, on a side note, I've done some changes throughout not big ones, but enough to where I should point out. I would go through all the components folder, just like last time, and compare all the differences in code with highlights going to the diff check, which I'll leave another link for again. And you can determine like where I made tweaks and had to update for this. As you can see, I had to do some updates to the timeline. So any other files within the components folder, just go see the difference between the last lesson. That way you can kind of walk through anything. Probably not a huge deal, but enough to where I'd say go back and look. And let me know through the comments if there are any questions. And as I walk through, and if I see bugs, I'm just going to be updating my my final repository. So if I find a bug, or hey, you find one, there's a good chance I might have found it. So go check and see if there's a later version, as always. And you might be able to fix something before you have to ask out. Thanks, and I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments if you did.